Now that we are ready to start coding locally, we're going to need a tool to be able to do that. Using the appropriate program to code your web pages is going to really be beneficial to your whole coding process and make it so much easier. So before we go ahead and install an application, I did want to talk about the different sorts of ways in which you can edit code. The first way is to just use a text editor. And this is something I don't recommend because text editors aren't going to help you with the formatting of the code. They are not going to allow you to create code that is color coded and, in essence, just make it easier for your whole process. The two options that we have that are going to basically be viable solutions are an IDE. An IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment, and this is typically used by programmers. It's a tool that simplifies the process of creating new software applications, including web applications. One of the most primary advantages of using an IDE is that it provides a centralized interface with all of the tools that a developer requires. And this is because an IDE was initially designed to incorporate all aspects of programming into a single application. Now, on the surface, that sounds like it's really robust and that it might be great, but I actually recommend that you start off with a code editor. A code editor is one of the most essential tools for programmers. It was developed with the express purpose of making the process of editing code more streamlined and straightforward. A text editor is comparable to a code editor, but the code editor is going to offer significantly more functionality, and it does a lot of the things that the IDE does, but it's specific for writing code for any sort of web-based use. So you can easily write HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and you can go ahead and use it for all sorts of other programming languages. IDEs are robust sets of tools that are intended to make programming as easy as possible, and a code editor is essentially a text editor on steroids. It has robust built-in features and specialized functionalities that are designed to ease and speed up the process of writing and editing code. The application that I'm going to recommend that you use for this class is going to be Brackets. You can access Brackets by going to brackets.io. On the homepage, it's going to give you some information about this particular application and just tell you some of the things that you can do with Brackets. Feel free to read through this and get more familiar with Brackets. What I'm going to do though is I'm simply going to click download, and it's going to go ahead and download the appropriate version for my operating system. I am currently on a Mac, so it's downloading the appropriate format for my operating system. If you are on a Windows machine, it will go ahead and determine that and download the appropriate application. Once the file has completely downloaded, you'll need to find it on your computer. Typically, this could be placed in your download folder or wherever else your computer generally is going to place downloaded files. All you have to do at that point is double click on the file. It's going to go ahead and open it for you. Because I'm using a Mac, the extension is DMG. If you're using a PC, you're going to have an executable file. Once the file is done downloading, you should see the shortcut to launch Brackets or the Brackets application. Once you double click on the application, depending on your operating system, you might see a window that looks something like this. This is simply letting me know that I can move the application into the application folder. I'll do that now. As soon as that process has been completed, you can simply double click on the shortcut for the application to launch the application. Depending on your operating system, you may get a notification that you've downloaded this, and are you sure you want to open it? I'll click yes, I do want to open it. Once you go ahead and open Brackets, it's going to look something like this. By default, Brackets is going to open up their Getting Started guide, which can definitely give you some information about Brackets. It is interesting that the file that they are going to display is actually HTML code. So you'll probably recognize some of the elements that are being displayed within this file, which is always good practice to just go ahead and look at code. If you want to go ahead and read through the file, it will give you instructions for a quick walkthrough of brackets features. I'm going to go ahead and close this window right here, which is displaying the health report. I do not need that. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the size of the font. You can easily change the size of the font that's being displayed by going to the View menu and just going to increase font size. You can also use the keyboard shortcuts. On a Mac, it would be Command plus. On a PC, it would be Control plus. And so if I click that multiple times, you can see that the font size is getting bigger. If I use Command or Control minus, it will get smaller. Another thing that I do want to point out to you is that you can customize the way that brackets looks. So we can go in here and we can go to View, and we can actually choose to hide the sidebar. This is the sidebar, so if I click Hide Sidebar, that is going to go away. I do not suggest you do that. I suggest you work with the sidebar showing, as this is where you can go ahead and place your root folder. This is going to be the folder that contains all of the elements of your website, and then you'll be able to easily switch between your HTML and your CSS-based files, along with anything else that happens to be inside of that root folder. So here's an example of a CSS file. One thing that I do want to mention about brackets is that it does color code the various elements of HTML and CSS. So in regard to CSS, it's going to show the selectors as being blue by default, the properties as being purple, and the values as being orange. If we go back to HTML, you can see that HTML elements are blue. If we look up here, we can see that this is an attribute, it's green, and then the value is orange. This is just a quick and easy way that you can go through your code, and it will make it easier for you to see what's going on. If you are working with both HTML and CSS, you can change your view to be a vertical or horizontal split. And if we do that, you'll see that you get two panes. So if I wanted to open the CSS file, I could simply grab the CSS file and just click it, and you can see it opens in the second pane. And at this point, I would probably want to make my brackets panel larger so that I can see more of what's going on. You can place your cursor between these two panes and give one pane more real estate or less real estate, depending on what it is that you're doing. If you ever want to return to the single pane view, you'll just click No Split, and that will get you back to where you're just working on one file. The next thing that I want to show you that you can do in brackets is you can change the color of the background and the code. And you do that by changing the theme. So in order to do that, we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to the Extension Manager. I'm going to open up the Extension Manager, and this is going to show me any extensions that I have installed or any extensions that I can get. So these are all the available extensions, and I'll talk about those in just a minute. Here are the themes. So if I go to themes, there's a ton of themes you can use where you can completely customize the way that you want brackets to look. And then if you've already installed any theme or any extension, it'll show up here. And under default is just the default themes. So you can see that there is a brackets dark theme that comes pre-installed and a brackets light theme. Before we customize our theme, I'll click close, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the theme. We can do that by going to View, Themes, and right here will show us any installed themes. So if I switch to brackets dark, it will give me the dark theme. If you wanted to increase the font size, you can go ahead and change this. So if I change this to 16, or even my font family, I can change that as well. And when I click done, those updates are going to populate through brackets. Now, going back to the extension manager, if we go back into the extension manager, you can go ahead and install additional themes and or extensions. So if we go to the theme category, there's all these themes. The only downside of using this is that it doesn't really give you a preview, so you're gonna have to kind of like try these out. You can click more info, and that will go ahead and launch a browser, and depending on the developer, they may have decided to give you a preview of what that theme looks like or not. This one does. So if I did this particular theme, you can see this is the color combinations that is going to show up for the HTML and the CSS. So feel free to customize the way Brackets looks. I'm going to close this, and I'll just go ahead and continue and use the dark theme that is the default. The other thing that I do want to mention to you is if you want to see what your page would look like in a browser, you can go to File, and then you can go to Live Preview. If we go to Live Preview, it's going to tell you a little bit about Live Preview. You'll click OK, and it's going to go ahead and open up a new version of Chrome, and what happens is it's going to display this page as it looks once the code has been rendered. So this is the HTML and the CSS that is being compiled for this particular page that we're looking at over here. And I'll just kind of set up a split situation so that we can see both of these side by side, like so. And with the live preview, if I change something on the page, so I'm just going to make an exclamation right here, you can see that that is going to show up right away. Some people really like this feature. I personally don't like the live preview feature because I use something called the developer tools, which we'll be learning about a little bit later on, and the live preview can interfere with that. So what I recommend is that you find your page on your computer and directly open it in the browser. But I did want to point this out because it is a feature of Brackets and some people really like to work in this way. Hopefully this will give you a quick overview on how to use Brackets and get you up and running. And as we go through the course, we'll talk about more things that we can do with the code editor. And of course, we'll be focusing on how we can actually code HTML and CSS files using a HTML or CSS editor.